Now, Helen Gurley Brown, the editor of Cosmo, you had some interesting conversations with her, and you learned some interesting things you share in your book about how Cosmo got across a certain philosophy or message to women at the time. Can you share more about that?
Right. She taught that sex without the kids and hard work will set you free. That was Gurley Brown's philosophy. She was had been a copywriter.
Sex without the kids and hard work will set you free. That was her message. Sex without the kids and hard work will set you free. Will set you free from what? Set you free from what? Because we can see now it didn't work. Even because basically this is what this is about. These ideas didn't work, but that's what it was at that time. But remember, they were initially, this came out of a group of privileged white women who ain't had nothing to do, or white women who had these ideas that they were, or they felt or whatever, they were oppressed by their men. But trickling down to the black community, sex without the kids and hard work will set you free. That didn't set our community free. It set us back. We got set back. They said, Victor Blackman says, they set the world on fire. All right, feminism is on the verge of collapsing the entire system. Said white women want liberation from white men. For what reason is beyond black folks, but black women didn't need liberation from black men. It was black men who needed it. Our hands were tied for 5 centuries. Yep. You already know it. Ricardo, you already know it. Victor says, without children and families, there's no, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm always preaching. We need families. We need families. Black men and black women, we got to find a way to get along. We got to find a way to reprogram ourselves and get along. But we got to understand what happened to us and who were the players and people who helped create this mess that we living in for ourselves. God is Yemen, y'all. I appreciate you being here. How you doing? How you doing? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Helen Gurley Brown. Remember this name. This name is one of the names that is lost in history when we're talking about the major players in helping to push these destructive ideologies. White women always competed with white men for superior. Right? Look. So check this out. I'm glad you said that, Renee. You reminded me. So check this out. So I worked in sexual and domestic violence prevention for about 12 years. And I can remember sitting in some of the sessions and hearing some of the white women talk and taking into account the unfortunate relationships that some of those women were in. But listening to some of the other women talk, a light went off. I was like, white women don't want equality. White women want power. Equality is the cloak that they use, but they really want power. They were going for power. And in a sneaky way, they slid that message to black women. Hey, go for power. Go for power. Go to try to overpower your men. But remember, our community didn't have the structure it needed to combat that, and we fell victim to it. And we like the fly in the Venus flytrap, and the flytrap has closed, and we're the fly that has been trying for decades to try to get out that Venus flytrap, and we just can't. So I appreciate you, Victor. I appreciate you, Yemi. I got us, Renee, everybody in here. I appreciate you all. Yep. That is why they do that to each other. But remember this name. Helen Gurley Brown, because put her right up there with the rest of them.
In California, she was one of the biggest advertising copywriters in the country. She was very good at what she did. And then she took Cosmopolitan, which had been a homemaker's magazine, and turned it into a sex rag, basically.
Sex rag.
And it was very, very popular in those days. Cosmo was the hottest women's magazine in the nation. And that was her philosophy. Hard work and sex without the kids will set you free. She didn't have children. She was married, but she didn't have children, nor did she want them. She said children were more of a nuisance than a blessing. And you could have...
Children were more of a nuisance than a blessing. This is what she's pushing. This is what she's pushing. And remember, like we need to grow our population. We need to grow our population. Who leads the country in baby deletions? How many baby deletions have our community had since they became possible? I think they said up to 20 to 40 million have happened. Imagine if our population had grown by 40 million over the past 70 years. We would have, well, if we were codified and structured, we would have a lot more power. Because you can't just have a whole bunch of Negroes just out here running around with no code and no structure. But they convinced us to take each other out in other ways, you know, using YouTube language, but you get it. You get what I'm saying. They convinced us to participate and being the leading ones of taking us out. Because remember, I call it the Negro programming, right? The white man's greatest invention was the nigga, right? Nigga mindset, Negro programming to be YouTube friendly, right? So with that implanted in programming and all the social engineering, that's why I asked the question. That's why the title is The Sexual Revolution, Liberation of Social Engineering. How did it affect us? What were we socially engineered into? A. McMill says they're all in the file. Celebrities, elites, politicians, eyes wide shut, elites, ritualistic, cabal, they're all involved. Yep. Hey man, look, even look, on the city level here in Tallahassee, I've paid attention enough. If you wanna get ahead, you're gonna have to give up your booty. And I don't want to get ahead that much. So yeah, I can't do it. I can't do none of the eyes wide shut stuff. Nah. No. But you're right though. Hey man, you're right. But it's like that's all of that comes out of this sexual revolution, this I would call it sexual degeneracy. Because we can see how in that realm we've degenerated. Black people have. Our focus is not family. Our focus is fornication over family, which is crazy. That's not what civilized people do.
You can get married, but you should have abortions or you should use the pill. And if the pill failed, you should have an abortion.
Can you tell me more how she instructed you and other writers to sell her particular ideology?
We made up a lot of those stories. It was just, you know, for example, a young woman, her name is Mia. She goes to Paris. She meets a man on the Champs-Elysees. That night, they fall in love. They fall in love that day. They go to a hotel on the left bank, and the next morning, you know, she knows that she's in love. It's all beautiful. It was all made up. There was no Mia. There was no hotel on the left bank. It was all an illusion. And we created this fantasy world. The Cosmo Girl, at least in the beginning, before a lot of women began to buy into it, the Cosmo Girl was just a sexual fantasy. She was a marketer's dream, however, because she would work hard, and she was on the pill, and she would get an abortion, so they weren't gonna have to fire her for being pregnant because she was never gonna get pregnant. Okay, she didn't press for working women's rights. She didn't press for family rights. She didn't press for child care. She just worked hard and for the corporation. Basically, she was a man.
Let me run it. Let me let her say that again.
It was just, you know, for example, a young woman, her name is Mia. She goes to Paris. She meets a man on the Champs-Elysees. That night, they fall in love. They fall in love that day. They go to a hotel on the left bank, and the next morning, you know, she knows that she's in love. It's all beautiful. It was all made up. There was no Mia. There was no hotel on the left bank. It was all an illusion. And we created this fantasy world. The Cosmo Girl, at least in the beginning, before a lot of women began to buy into it, the Cosmo Girl was just a sexual fantasy. She was a marketer's dream, however, because she would work hard, and she was on the pill, and she would get an abortion, so they weren't gonna have to fire her for being pregnant because she was never gonna get pregnant. Okay, she didn't press for working women's rights. She didn't press for family rights. She didn't press for child care. She just worked hard and for the corporation. Basically, she was a man.
So
turning the women's in. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? I got to be the man. Dutch, I'm not familiar with that sorority. Eta Upsilon Gamma has a badge with skull and bones and a Masonic. Yeah, I mean, look, all them folks. Look, all of these people. Once again, where my names at? Where my names at? All of these people. That's what I'm saying. Like the overall outcomes, because these are people who help shape society. So the Black community may not have been their focus, their target, but they understood their impact and they understood what overall long-term outcomes were, because these were people who studied this stuff. They just didn't haphazardly do this. Once again, Margaret Sanger, Betty Friedan, Helen Gurley Brown, Larry Ladler, and Bernard Nathanson. She gonna get into all of them. We getting into all of them. I got information and little tidbits on all of those people. So yeah, like, I'm glad she's spilling the beans. Because we can get into the people who help architect and construct the debauchery that we live in to this day. Social engineering is real. That's why they call it systematic. That's why Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, Neely Fuller, all our scholars say it's a system. It's not on the individual level, it's on the systematic level, so it can systematically destabilize us. Yes, individuals can rise up within the system, but the masses won't. It's not designed for the masses. So check this out. Who started the sexual revolution? Intentional figures and forces. It's important to distinguish roots from drivers. And remember, Sue Ellen Browder just told us that Helen Gurley Brown, one of her real missions was to make sure that they turn women into men. You're going to be the marketer's dream. You're going to work hard, you're going to play hard, you're going to hunch hard, and you're going to spend a lot of money. You might have a family, forget them kids. You work hard, spend hard, punch hard, and be the realest man you can be as a woman. Said real women's empowerment is equal opportunities, equality in society, balance, natural sexuality, and paid family leave. We get rid of this white supremacy stuff. We can get somewhere, because we have always been more egalitarian. Black folk, we have always been more egalitarian. Now, Black folk under the system of white supremacy, Black folk under colonial ideologies, the colonial rule, we got some Black folk that's treating Black women messed up. We can all admit that. We ain't gonna act like there wasn't no sucker ass Black men out there. There are. It's a lot of sucker ass Black men out there. But what we also understand is the social engineering is real. We have been specifically programmed to go against each other. So that's why we're here to fight the power, fight the programming, and make sure that we can get along and build, because we have to elevate from survival units. We're still operating in survival units. We have to elevate from survival units to get back to creating families, for ourselves. So you got people, scientific and intellectual influences within the sexual revolution. People like Alfred Kinsey, his research on sexual behavior in men and women showed that many America's sexual behaviors didn't match public norms, helping legitimize sexual research. Masters and Johnsons did their clinical studies on sexual physiology, published in the 1960s, pushed sexuality into scientific and public conversation. Psychoanalytic thinkers and counterculture writers, Wilhelm Reich and others, influenced young activists and intellectuals. Cultural and technical drivers were the pill, approved for contraceptive use in 1960. Feminist movements, second wave feminism emphasized women's autonomy over their bodies and sexual lives. gay liberation and civil rights activism, expanded definitions of sexual identity, and we can see how civil rights was hijacked. Civil rights in this, because a part of this was the hijacking of civil rights as well. So yeah, remembering that. So there's also somebody named Shulamith Firestone, who was a radical feminist, who was described as a radical feminist, argued in The Dialect of Sex in 1970 that true equality required dismantling biological and family structures that tied women's oppression to reproductive labor. Firestone's work was seminal in feminist theory and shows how access to contraception became tied to ideas about dismantling traditional family roles. So Shulamith Firestone was instrumental in helping to push the ideas of dismantling the traditional family role. And you know, I hear a lot of people talking about because the term nuclear family is used. So when the term nuclear family is used, the idea is that white people created that, and white people created the man, woman, and child. No, man, woman, and child has existed with black people, with people. That's how you create families, man, woman, and child. Everybody had the concept of man, woman, and child. It just, a name was put on it at a specific time called the nuclear family. But man, woman, and child is how humanity came in. All societies celebrated man, woman, and child. We can go back to ancient Egypt and see they have the celebration of man, woman, and child. Asa, Aset, and Heru, what they call the Trinity, the true Trinity, the Father, the Mother, and the Child, has been celebrated. Don't let white folk fool you now. That's why we here doing what we doing, learning what we learn. Don't let these white folk fool you now, right? Don't let the term nuclear family bog you down and be like, white people created that. White people the first ones to have the man up. Man, woman, and child is how humanity got here.